You know, it's strange how the most important moments in your life never announce themselves. They just happen, quietly, brutally, like a door closing behind you without a sound. That morning started like any other. I remember the soft light coming through the blinds, the faint hum of the city outside. My wife, Anna, had left early, or so I thought. She said she was meeting with Daniel, the producer, to discuss our project's final funding round. I didn't think much of it. Daniel had been helping me get my film off the ground for months. He believed in me, or at least I believed he did. I decided to surprise them. Bring coffee, maybe croissants, something small, human, to remind them, and maybe myself, that we were still a team, that this dream of mine, our dream, still had a heartbeat. The studio was quiet when I arrived. Too quiet. The kind of silence that fills the air before something breaks. I remember pushing open the office door, smiling, saying, "Morning, you two," and then stopping. You ever have one of those moments where sound just disappears? Like the world suddenly forgets how to breathe? That's what it felt like. Anna was there. So was Daniel. But not the way I'd imagined. Not the way I'd hoped. They froze. She turned, her face pale, eyes wide, lips parting as if to speak. But no words came out. Daniel stammered something, some pathetic half-sentence that meant nothing. And I just stood there, coffee spilling from the cup, dark stains spreading like bruises across the carpet. You'd think I'd scream, or cry, or hit him. But no. I laughed, quietly. That kind of laugh that sounds more like breaking glass than joy. I left without saying a word. The days that followed were a blur. The project fell apart within a week. Daniel pulled the plug, said creative differences. The investors vanished. Anna moved out. And me? I was left in our apartment surrounded by half-written scripts, old storyboards, and a silence that could crush bone. I didn't eat much. I didn't sleep. I just sat there, staring at the blank wall where our wedding photo used to hang. And then, one night, I picked up my phone, almost without thinking, and hit record. I started talking about betrayal, about trust, about how sometimes love doesn't die, it just rots from the inside until all that's left is the smell. I filmed myself, my eyes red, my hands shaking. Then I filmed the city, wet streets, empty cafes, lovers holding hands under flickering lights. I shot everything I felt too deeply to say. For 2 weeks I wandered through the city, capturing fragments of strangers' lives, their loneliness, their laughter, their small, secret heartbreaks. I cut it all together on my laptop, called it On Betrayal. It wasn't polished, it wasn't planned. It was raw, too raw maybe, but it was real. I uploaded it to a small online festival just to see. I didn't even expect a reply. Then, a month later, I got an email. They said they'd chosen my short film, not just to screen, but to open the festival. And then, somehow, word spread. Critics wrote about it. A haunting portrait of love and loss, they called it. People cried. People felt. And suddenly, I wasn't the man whose wife had left him. I was the filmmaker who turned heartbreak into art. Funny thing, though. Success doesn't heal you. It doesn't erase the moment you walked into that room, or the sound of your own voice breaking in the dark. But it gives you something to hold on to, a reason to keep breathing. Sometimes I still watch that short film, not because I'm proud, though I am, but because it reminds me that even the worst pain can be transformed. That sometimes, when life takes everything from you, it's giving you something far greater in return. It's giving you a story. You know, people always imagine betrayal as something loud. Shouting, breaking glass, doors slamming. But it isn't. It's quiet. It's a whisper in the next room, a half smile that doesn't reach the eyes. It's silence where there used to be laughter. That morning I woke up to an empty bed. The sheets were still warm on her side, her scent, that soft jasmine perfume she always wore, still lingered on the pillow. Anna had texted earlier, "Meeting with Daniel at the studio. Don't wait for me for breakfast." Just that, simple, casual. I remember smiling at the message. Daniel and I had been working together for nearly a year. He was the producer who believed in me when no one else did. The project was small, but it meant everything to me. A story about love surviving distance. I thought it was ironic, in a way, that I was making a film about love while barely holding on to my own. Still, I wanted to surprise them, bring coffee, maybe a few croissants from that little bakery Anna loved. She always said they tasted like Paris. It was raining that morning. Not the heavy kind, but that steady drizzle that turns the city into a watercolor painting. I remember how the traffic lights reflected off the wet pavement, how the world looked softer, slower, like it was holding its breath. The studio was on the 5th floor of an old building downtown. I climbed the stairs, balancing the coffee tray, humming a tune from the soundtrack I'd been composing in my head for weeks. The door to the office was half closed. I could hear faint laughter inside, hers. It was the sound that used to make me feel invincible. I pushed the door open, and the world, my world, just stopped. There she was, Anna, my Anna, and Daniel. The coffee slipped from my hand before I even understood what I was seeing. The cups hit the floor, warm liquid splattering across the carpet. It smelled suddenly bitter, like burnt hope. They froze. She turned, eyes wide, lips parting, like she wanted to explain, to deny, to undo it somehow. Daniel tried to say something, my name, I think, but the words died in his throat. And me? I couldn't speak. I couldn't even breathe. My chest felt hollow, my ribs like paper. I just stared. And then, God help me, I laughed. It wasn't a real laugh. It was something sharp and broken that didn't belong to me. I left, walked out into the rain without an umbrella. The city swallowed me whole. The following days blurred together. Calls went unanswered. The project collapsed. Daniel sent me a carefully worded email about creative differences and unfortunate timing. Investors withdrew. The studio emptied itself of our dreams. Anna didn't come home. She didn't even try to. At first I thought I'd go mad. I sat in our apartment surrounded by storyboards, camera equipment, drafts of scripts that suddenly meant nothing. The silence was unbearable. Every object reminded me of her. The chipped mug she loved, the scarf draped over the chair, the half-finished painting she started last winter. I stopped eating. I stopped showering. Days bled into nights, nights into days. The city kept moving outside my window, uncaring. And then, one night, it must have been past midnight, I picked up my phone. The room was dark except for the streetlight bleeding through the blinds. I hit record. I didn't know why, I just needed to speak. I talked for hours, about love, about betrayal, about the way a heart doesn't break cleanly. It fractures into 1,000 invisible pieces that keep cutting you long after the wound should have healed. When my voice finally cracked, I turned the camera toward the window, filmed the city, wet, shimmering, indifferent. Then I went outside. For 2 weeks I wandered, filming strangers, a man smoking alone under a neon sign, a woman feeding pigeons by the river, a child chasing his own reflection in a puddle. I filmed everything that felt true. I called it On Betrayal. I edited it on my old laptop. No music, no polish, just raw fragments stitched together by emotion. I uploaded it to a small online festival almost as a joke, a farewell to what I thought was my failed dream. Then, a month later, the email arrived. They'd chosen it. Not only that, it had won. The jury called it a masterpiece of emotional honesty. Suddenly messages flooded in. Producers, journalists, strangers telling me how it made them cry, how they saw their own heartbreak reflected in mine. It was surreal. Overnight, the man who'd lost everything became a filmmaker people wanted to work with. My name, started appearing in places I'd only dreamed of. But success doesn't heal you. It doesn't silence the echo of that laugh in the office or erase the smell of coffee and rain. Sometimes, even now, when people congratulate me, I still feel that moment. Standing there, heart in ruins, realizing that the story I'd been living wasn't real anymore. And yet, that pain gave me a voice. Sometimes I think art is born only in the spaces where something breaks. Maybe we need to be shattered to see clearly. Maybe that's the price of truth. I still have the phone I shot it on. Cracked screen, fading battery. I keep it in a drawer next to the festival's laurel certificate. Whenever I feel lost, and I still do more often than I admit, I take it out and watch that film again. Not because I miss her. Not even because I'm proud. But because it reminds me of something I learned the hardest possible way. When life takes everything from you, your love, your dream, your certainty, it's not the end. It's the beginning of the story you were meant to tell. Fame doesn't arrive like lightning. It seeps in, quietly, almost politely. A few messages, a couple of interviews, an invitation or two. Before you know it, people start looking at you differently. They call you an artist. They talk about your vision. I should have felt proud. And I did, in a way. But mostly I felt like an imposter standing in someone else's story. Every time I saw my name printed in a magazine or flashed across a screen, I wondered if the man in those words was really me, or just what was left after everything I loved had burned away. Still, life moved forward. I was invited to festivals, panels, premieres. There were bright lights, red carpets, polite applause. I smiled for cameras, shook hands with strangers, pretended not to notice how hollow the applause sounded when I went back to my hotel room at night. Then one evening, at an international festival in Prague, I saw her, Anna. She was standing by the bar, her hair shorter now, her smile a little quieter, but it was her, unmistakably her. And beside her, of course, was Daniel. My stomach twisted. The air seemed to thicken. For a second I thought about leaving, just turning around and walking straight out into the cold night. But I didn't. I walked toward them. She saw me first. Her expression shifted, surprise, then guilt, then something softer. Daniel's smile faltered, that fake confidence flickering for just a heartbeat. "Michael," he said, offering a hand. "It's been a while." "Has it?" I replied. "Feels like yesterday." Anna looked at me, eyes searching mine for anger or forgiveness. I wasn't sure which. "You've done well," she said. Her voice trembled. "Your film, it's extraordinary." I nodded. "Funny thing about pain," I said. "It photographs beautifully." There was a pause. Long, brittle, full of things we'd never say. Then Daniel excused himself, muttering something about a call. Coward. Anna and I were left alone in that crowded room, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses echoing like ghosts. "I wanted to reach out," she said after a moment, "but I didn't know how. I thought you'd hate me." "I did," I said, "for a long time. Then I realized hate takes too much effort. It's just another form of love, really, one that refuses to die." Her eyes glistened. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "A terrible one. I looked at her then. Really looked. The woman I had once built my world around. She looked older, not in years but in the way sorrow leaves fingerprints on the soul. I used to dream of hearing those words," I said quietly. "But now, I don't need them. What you gave me, or took from me, it made me who I am. You didn't destroy me, Anna. You freed me." She flinched, tears threatening to fall. I wanted to reach out, to brush them away, but my hands stayed at my sides. "I'm happy for you," she said finally, voice barely a whisper. "So am I replied. And that was the last time I ever saw her. Months passed. The short film grew into something larger, a feature deal, a new crew, new collaborators. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being pulled back toward the story I'd tried to escape. So I decided to make a new film. Not about betrayal this time, but about forgiveness. About how love, even when broken, leaves behind light. I called it The Quiet After. It wasn't about Anna, not exactly. It was about a man who loses everything, then learns that loss isn't the end. It's a doorway. I shot it with real people on the same city streets where I once wandered alone. I wanted it to feel true. During the premiere, as the credits rolled, the audience stayed silent. Then the applause began, slow at first, then rising like a wave. I stood there, heart pounding, realizing that for the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about the past. When the lights came up, I felt something I hadn't felt since before everything fell apart. Peace. Later that night, I walked alone through the city. The air was cold, the river lights trembling on the water. I thought about Anna, about Daniel, about that morning in the office, and how far away it seemed now. Like a story I once heard, not a life I'd lived. You know, I used to think betrayal was the end of love. But I've learned that love doesn't really end, it just changes shape. Sometimes it becomes silence, sometimes art. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it becomes freedom. It's been 6 years since The Quiet After. Sometimes I still can't believe how far it all went. The festivals, the interviews, the nights on red carpets that felt more like dreams than memories. My name started to mean something. People called me visionary, authentic, the man who captures heartbreak with tenderness. But success, I've learned, doesn't end your story. It only gives you a better view of the ghosts still following you. I bought a small house by the sea, somewhere quiet, where the wind carries the scent of salt and memory. Most days I write in the mornings, walk the cliffs in the afternoon, and fall asleep to the sound of the waves. It's peaceful, yes, but not empty. Never empty. One evening, my agent called. "There's a studio in London," she said. "They want you to remake On Betrayal as a feature. Bigger scope, international release. They'll give you complete creative control." I laughed softly. "You mean they want me to relive my worst heartbreak with better lighting?" But she was serious. And the more I thought about it, the more I felt that old pull again, that dangerous curiosity to reopen a wound just to see if it still bleeds. So I said yes. Pre-production began that autumn. The studio was perfect. Glass walls, open space, the smell of coffee and sawdust. It reminded me of the first one in a way, but without the ghosts. We cast for weeks. Dozens of actors came and went, some talented, some forgettable. None of them felt right. The story was too personal. I couldn't just give it to anyone. Then one afternoon a young actress walked in. Her name was Clara. She had that rare kind of presence, the kind that fills the room quietly, like sunlight creeping through a curtain. She read a few lines from the script, and for a moment I forgot where I was. It wasn't just her voice. It was the way she looked at me, as if she saw straight through the years, into the part of me that never healed. After the audition, she smiled shyly. "Did I do okay?" I wanted to say, "You reminded me of someone I once loved, and that terrifies me." But all I said was, "You did more than okay." We cast her the next day. Working with Clara was strange, beautiful, painful. She was professional, curious, kind. Everything Anna once was, but softer somehow, untouched by bitterness. Watching her on set was like watching my past being rewritten, scene by scene, frame by frame. There were moments when she'd ask, "What was he feeling here?" Or, why does he forgive her in the end? And I'd pause, searching for an answer that was both honest and bearable. Finally, one night after shooting, we were sitting by the monitor reviewing a take, the final confrontation scene. The character based on me tells his lover, "You didn't ruin me. You revealed me." Clara turned to me. "Did that really happen?" I looked at the screen, at her reflection playing the woman who once shattered my heart, and said, "In a way, yes. Maybe not in words, but in truth." She nodded. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Painful, but beautiful." And I realized then that's exactly what life is. When we premiered the film, it received a standing ovation. Not for the production or the cinematography, though both were praised, but for its honesty. Viewers said it felt like watching someone forgive life itself. After the screening, Clara found me outside, beneath the theater lights. She said, "You know, I think this film was your goodbye." "Goodbye to what?" I asked. "To her," she said. "To the version of you who was still waiting for closure." I smiled, but I couldn't speak, because she was right. Later that night, alone in my hotel room, I watched the ocean through the window and thought about Anna, about Daniel, about everything that had led me here. And I finally understood something that years of success hadn't taught me. Forgiveness isn't a single moment. It's a lifetime of choosing peace over memory. A few months later, I received a letter. No return address, but I knew the handwriting immediately. It was short. "I saw your new film." I cried. "I hope you're happy now. A." I folded the letter and placed it inside the case of the phone I'd shot my first short film with. It felt right, like closing a circle. Now, when people ask me what On Betrayal was really about, I tell them the truth. It wasn't about being betrayed. It was about learning to love after it. And sometimes, when the sun sets and the sea turns gold, I pick up that old phone and hit play. I watch the shaky images, the raw confession of a younger man who didn't yet know that heartbreak isn't the end of a story. It's the beginning of the one worth telling.